As I said just a second ago, this text follows right on the heels of what we had looked at last week, what we had talked about. The grapes are still up. It was the vine and the grape and the branches. Jesus tells us that He is the vine and we are the branches, and we are to bear much fruit. He also mentions that we can't do anything without Him. If we are separated from Him, if we are not abiding in Him, we talk about being connected. If we're not connected in Him, then we can do nothing. But with Him, we can do anything He asks us to do. We are to bear fruit. What does it mean to bear fruit? We talked about it meaning several different things, but one thing we talked about was it meant building up the body of Christ, being able to go out and make new disciples, being nurtured and empowered that we might witness to the gospel message, as the Great Commission tells us out of Matthew, to go and make new disciples, to make disciples of all nations. This is kind of a commissioning sense here, where we're to go and bear fruit, to go out and do what He's called us to do. In today's text, Jesus drills down just a little bit deeper, goes maybe one more level, and He begins to tell us that this abiding, what this abiding really means. It means that we abide in His love. We abide in His love. So we are to abide in Jesus. He tells us to abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. And now He says, you do that by abiding in my love. Abiding in my love. Now He tells us, He goes on and says, we do this by keeping His commandments. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in His love. If we do this, our joy will be complete. And I just realized I forgot to change the message slide. The message is called Commandment Keeping Equals Joy. Just that's what it's supposed to say on that slide right there. I was supposed to do that this morning about 8 o'clock. Yeah. I did it in blue and white. What do you think? Anyway. Commandment keeping equals joy. You didn't know where I was going with this. If we do this, our joy will be complete. I have said, he goes on to say, I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. So I was thinking about that. What do you think of when you think of keeping commandments? Is joy at the top of your list? No? No, I got a couple hands. What do you think of? We're back to non-rhetorical questions. I'm looking for responses. What do you think of when you think of keeping commandments?
Obedience.
Obedience, okay.
Old Testament law.
Old Testament law, okay. Do you remember how many commandments there were in the Old Testament law?
Not thousands.
Not quite.
Well, no.
I know you know. Be quiet. Oh, no.
Well, there's the then there are all those.
No, you're close on the thousands. There's actually a number.
Yeah.
And 10 is not it. You're right. And hopefully my resource is right because I didn't count it. I often think of the 10 Commandments when I hear commandments, but there were 613 laws in the Old Testament, rules in the Old Testament that the Jews considered commandments. 248 thou shalt, and one for every day of thou shalt not. 200, yeah, I know my days of the week. 365 thou shalt not. A heavy burden laid on the people, if you will. It sounds overwhelming, but think about it. What about our legal code today, here in the United States? We got a couple more than 600 in whatever I said it was, 13. When I was in law enforcement with the Coast Guard, I was responsible for going up and down the Delaware River and inspecting the cargo ships and the tankers and all the port facilities for compliance with federal regulations. And I worked out of 3 volumes of U.S. Code of Regulations that were this thick. There must have been thousands of pages in those books. And I don't know how many laws there were in there, but there was a lot. And that was just my volumes of the code of the U.S. Code. That was just what I had to deal with. Other people were dealing with other volumes, and other agencies deal with different volumes yet. Yes, that 613 may sound like a lot, but think about it. We deal with a whole lot more right now, right here. How does that bring us joy? How does keeping rules bring us joy? Jesus explains what he means by keeping his commandments. Now he says, keep my commandments in the plural, but then he says in the singular, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. He brings it down to one commandment, those 613 rules, those 10 commandments that we memorized in Sunday school class, and all of the laws and the prophets and everything that's been said. He brings it down to one commandment. If you keep this commandment, you keep my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Now there's a lot to unpack in that one commandment, but let's look at it a little bit more carefully to make sure that is what he's saying. If we go to Romans 13, 8 through 10, Paul says this, let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another. For the one who loves their fellow human being has fulfilled the law. The commandments: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not covet, and whatever other commandment there may be are summed up in this one rule: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to its neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. That's what Paul had to say about it in Romans when he wrote to the Galatians, chapter 5, verses 13 through 14. He said this, not that the letter was in chapters, but anyway. He said this, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge in the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. Now that serve one another gives us a sense of what this love is supposed to look like. Serve one another in love. The entire law is summed up in a single command: love your neighbor